So I then asked some people in New York what they consider the most difficult and backward people in the New York area, Brooklyn, New York, Queens. And they said there's an Arab community in Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. I'm not attacking the Arabs, but this community group still believe the earth is flat. So I said, boy, Jacque, you got to try that. You got to try to change that. If you can't, you can forget your project. So I called up a guy. I found out who was in charge. I always worked with a guy in charge. His name was Elbaz. And I said, Mr. Elbaz, I'd like to talk to you. First thing he said, are you Arab? That's his dialect. I know all these different dialects well. So I said, that means yes in Arabic. I speak a little bit of many different languages. So he said, from where your father he born? Where was your father born? I said, in Lebanon. He said, very good, come and saw me, come and see me. So I came to see him. He said to me, you believe the world is round? He held his hand up like that. I said, yes. That means it can't be in the Arab world. He felt sorry for me. Then he pointed to his head, which means he's smarter than I am. That's his body language. He held up his head and said, if the world is round, man fall me down here. All the water, he fall me down from the world over here. You understand? The water here, don't fall me down. So here, all the water, all the people, everything, he fall me down. Now he's using the best reasoning he had. Obviously it wasn't, if he used words like gravitational effect, it doesn't get to him at all. So I said, I got to get to Elbaz, otherwise I'd be in a difficult problem. So I brought stuff with me. I anticipated his value system, since I spent a lot of time thinking about different types of people. So I gave him a balloon, and I rubbed it with fur very fast. And I put cornflakes in his hand and told him to hold his hand away from the balloon, underneath it. Does anybody know what happened to the cornflakes? They all were attracted to the balloon by static electricity. His jaw hit the pavement. And he said, world he magnet? I said, yes. He went and explained that to all the other Arabs. I didn't have to argue with him. You demonstrate what they don't understand. I took about 5 or 6 of them to an airport. They've never seen an airplane. I just wanted to see how they would react. So Elbaz, being the leader, they all turned to him and they said, Elbaz, why they put the fan in front of the aeroplane as a propeller? He said, they fly up near to the sun, they get hot, so they put the fan in front of it. And that was pretty good for a guy with no knowledge about that. But I was curious, how can you know anything unless you're given something? So I began to question, can man really think or invent? What is thinking? Well, it appears to be talking to yourself. What is invention? If a man can't think, can he invent things? So at that time, I was invited to Princeton to speak to the sociology department on my thoughts and experience. I called also the American Psychological Association. I'd like to talk to you about new ways of getting to people. They said, are you a psychologist? You know, are you a student? No, no thanks. They slammed the door. No, okay? I just want you to know what happened. I did try to get things out there, but having no credentials makes it difficult. And I did a lot of different things in New York. I should tell you something about them. There's a place called Hell's Kitchen in that area. Crime was very high in that area amongst juveniles. So I went to a juvenile center, juvenile hall, what they call a correctional institute. I said, I'd like to watch the way you treat kids, what you do with juvenile delinquents. So the guy said, are you a student of psychology? And I said, no. He said, I'm sorry. So I said, it's very important for me to see that. He said, yeah, but you have no qualifications. You're not studying psychology. Your dad isn't a psychiatrist. I said, look, the Wright brothers were nothing. They were bicycle mechanics. And the experts used to write books on why men can't fly. We're talking about the establishment. And the right person never read that book, apparently, so they built a flying machine. And Louis Pasteur was not a doctor, he was a chemist. If people died taking his first, he'd have been executed. But they happened to live. Louis Pasteur was a chemist. And if you go down the line, Alexander Graham Bell was not an electrical engineer. He used to teach the deaf how to speak in front of a flame. Soup, the flame would move. You know, he'd use good method, and he made different devices. Out of that came the telephone. But it was not discovered. He didn't sit down and invent it. I'll tell you later how he did it. But man cannot think of anything new. So when I spoke at the Department of Sociology, I didn't want to speak to the sociology group. I wanted to address everyone in the university. So my title was, Man Can't Think or Reason. That made everyone angry in all the departments. So they didn't come to the sociology department, they came to the auditorium where they held a meeting. So before I even said one word, a guy from the optics department got up and said that I disagree with you, I take issue with you, I believe man can think and reason. I said, give me one example of man thinking and reasoning. He said, well, it's easy. I said, do it. What is it? He said, well, the camera. There was no camera out there. Somebody had to invent the camera. There's nothing in nature that's going to suggest it. So I said, you're wrong. If you go into a barn, anywhere with a knothole in it, where daylight comes in, you'll see cows walking upside down on the wall of the barn. And if anybody doesn't know what I mean, raise your hand.
A pinhole camera.
Yes, that's a pinhole camera. But in the Holy Land, over 1,000 years ago, they made huts, domes out of mud and straw. And there happened to be a hole in one, just a hole accidentally made. And you can see people walking upside down, inside that, and you paid 2 pieces of silver to see the upside down world. No, the guys weren't phonies, they just didn't know what made it occur. That's where the camera came from. So the guy got mad at me. He said, damn it, he said, what about the movie camera? He's one-upmanship, you know. He tried to set that aside. So I said, in China, over nearly running more than 2,000 years ago, they used to cut out a silhouette of a girl with her hands in this position. Well, I'll draw with that one I saw in the Chinese museum. It was very bad. It didn't look like a person very much. It was called a dancing girl. It was just a silhouette painted black. And the Chinese made paper out of bamboo. They called bamboo paper. And if you oil it, it's semi-transparent. Now if you put this little girl in front of the bamboo screen about 2-3 inches and light a candle in front of the girl, as the candle flickered, the girl danced. Does anybody understand it? If you light a candle behind this pencil, as it flickers, the shadow will move up and back on the screen. If you put 3 candles, there will be 3 dancing girls. Do you understand that? Now the Chinese made that, but they also made pamphlets. Let me see if I can. They took bamboo paper and they lined up one sheet behind the other, so they had about 10 pages. I'm just trying to show you what they did, roughly. Then they bind it together. I'm not sure what they used. Then they'd write the Chinese characters up and down. This is ancient China. Then they made a mark in the corner to identify the page that had the information they want. Accidentally, if you happen to flip it fast, the mark in the corner jumps all over the place. Is there anybody not familiar with that? If you made marks in a pad and flipped it, they would jump around. It took about 30 years after that experience for a Chinaman to draw a bird with different successive pictures of the wings in flight. And he drew them in the corner of the book and went, and the bird looked like it was flying. So everybody doesn't understand me? I don't mind repeating it.